We are live. JT here. Welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I just want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are tuning in live as we stream into the Facebook community, whether you are watching the replay on Facebook or on YouTube, whether you're listening to the replay on the podcast. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me and my special guest today. And my promise to you is, if you go all in, I guarantee you will take nuggets of wisdom that will allow you to succeed in any area of your life. I've been looking forward to our conversation today. The one magic thing about this time has really been, it's really prompted and given us all an opportunity to connect with people, from our past and people who have sort of inspired us or helped us along the way. My guest today in the huddle is someone who we go back actually to high school. He was someone who I looked up to when I was a young athlete at Brother Andre growing up. And then I was fortunate enough to reconnect with him, and he was part of the Western Mustangs Football alum. So I've really got an opportunity to really get to know him, to build connection and really, have this sense of brotherhood with him. My guest in the huddle today is the co-owner of the Rep Room London. My guest in the huddle today is Pete Mogan. How are you today, brother?
I'm very good and a little bit not embarrassed but shy based on that incredible introduction you gave me. Thank you, JT. You're very kind.
Yeah. Hey, no worries, brother. It's I really would just want to take a moment just to send you some gratitude. The one thing I've really loved about our time getting to know each other is how you've always been someone who will stop and have a conversation. And I know you're a few years ahead of me at BA and Western, but you always took the time to have a conversation. Like, it never felt like, you always have loved helping and serving people. So that's just something I just want to take a moment just to send some gratitude and thank you for doing that for me on my journey, brother.
Well, you're most welcome. And if I could reflect that back, thank you for listening to me, because I know I can be a little verbose and I can go on and on sometimes. And I'm never short of things to say. And I warn people, if you're going to ask me a question, be ready for the answer.
Oh, definitely. I think that speaks volumes to your growth mindset, which I think people will definitely get a sense of from our conversation. So, Pete, one of the things I always like to remind people is this: life is a game, and games are supposed to be fun. So I'm curious, what is an interesting fact, some may say a quirk, that maybe a lot of people don't know about you, that you would feel comfortable sharing with our community?
Oh, I'd have to think about that one. A quirk. Maybe that I do talk a lot. I do get pretty extensive on answers sometimes, and I guess one of the things that I'm working on is realize that not everybody is interested about certain topics as I may be. So the first 30 seconds to a minute, they get the answer they're looking for, and the next 5, 10, 15 minutes are trying to figure out how to end this conversation. But I guess that might be the one that maybe people don't know off the start, but they figure out pretty quick.
What I heard from you is, again, that your superpower of curiosity, asking questions. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I kind of like a 4-year-old sometimes.
Well, that's what's keeping you looking and feeling so young, brother. So kudos to you.
Maybe.
So, brother, you've had a very successful career as an athlete, and you were a high performer at many different sports, right? Yeah, football first, and then, bodybuilding and powerlifting. And then you've sort of transitioned into this coaching role. And now, I view you as being, a leader in the wellness space and fitness space. So I'm curious for you, what role has sport played for you in your life? And what is maybe the biggest takeaway that you still apply to your life today?
So sport for me, and this is reflecting back, it has given me a real opportunity to kind of test my limits, to test my capacity for strain, for the unknown, in a controlled environment. The something I've come to realize, especially in my current role with supporting, the coaching and the exercise and the training of people, is as good as it all is for physical development, mental wellness, and all that. There's a capacity for learning how to manage strain. You know, the example I use when I explain this to people is I ask people, what happens to your body when you're excited and looking forward to something? Well, your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up, you get a little cortisol release, adrenaline release, cold sweats, palm sweaty, you're excited. And then the next question I ask is, what happens when you're facing an event that you're dreading? You've lost somebody close, you got called to the boss's office for a talk, you're in trouble, something bad is you're going to have to deal with. Your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up, you get cortisol release, you get sweaty, you get nervous. Whole feeling, the physiology is almost identical. The only difference is your perception of the event. And then the third one, where we link it all together, I say, what happens when you exercise, you train for sport, whatever, you push yourself? Your heart rate goes up, your breathing goes up, you get cortisol release, you get adrenaline release. The physiology is the exact same. And in hindsight, looking back, I'm sure anybody who's played sports, they know when you're going in to play, the really hard team, or they got an all-star player, and you have this desire, you want to win, but there's that moment where you're like, I don't know if we're going to win, and nobody wants to lose. I've lost championship games, I've lost playoff games. I can remember playing at Western my last year, and when I unbuckled the chin strap for the last time, that's an experience, but it's all voluntary. And so sports and exercise and training and all this has given me capacity how to manage strain, because at points in your life, there's going to be instances where you have no choice. Like, for example, a pandemic hits and your business has to be closed, and this job gets lost, and crazy things happen. And what I believe is the people who can physically manage the physical symptoms of strain, they have more capacity for the mental, the emotional, and overall, they're better at managing strain. And to me, that's one of the biggest benefits of getting kids involved in sport, of involving yourself in exercise, of being in that kind of situation. So.
And I love how you peel it sort of back, right? And like, you'd like to break things down. And that's where I can see why you're such a great coach is, you're breaking it down to like the real fine points and nitty gritty. And I love how you talk about strain. So I'm curious, that strain, how has that lesson shown up for you? Like you talked about, no one would have known, 2 years ago that we would have, this last 18 months would have unfolded the way it did, right? Mm-hmm. So really, how has that ability to manage the strain, to thrive in spite of the strain, how has that shown up for you in your life over the last couple of years?
Oh man, I mean, when Jess started the business, there was a whole lot going on, a whole lot of distractions, and there was times where you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are we doing this? And we should just shut it down. But no, we're like, okay, deep breath, push through. You may have known, or some of your listeners may have seen, back in February this year, I had a fairly significant sledding accident. And you know what, it would have been easier to just say, everything's just got to stop. I'm just going to focus on this small little area of my life and just everything go away. But no, we kept everything going. Through all the shutdowns, we were forced to close our business. Well, we could have just closed the doors and said, too bad, there's nothing we can do. But we found a way to keep things going, keep our members engaged. And, there's lots of days when you don't want to, and you feel beat down, beat up, but then you realize, okay, there's something in you that says, I'm going to take that next step forward. I'm going to march forward. And, if I relate it again back to exercise or what we do over my life, I've done thousands of workouts, and there's thousands of workouts I haven't wanted to do. I've been looking for it. I've been looking at it going, you know what, this is going to hurt. I'm busy. I'm tired. I don't want to do this. But with that being said, there is not one single workout I've ever regretted doing. And
Mhm.
so that same kind of mentality that makes you say, you know what, I don't want to do this, but I know I'm going to do it. And then on the backside, once you get through it, that elation, that feeling, that sense of accomplishment has really translated to a lot of other tasks. You know, I don't want to fill out all this paperwork. I don't want to put all these procedures in place. I don't want to add all these extra protocols because there's a whole lot of extra work. But you do it, and then looking back, you're like, you know what? I'm really glad I did that. I'm really glad I put that effort in. I'm really glad I got myself to where I am now.
And I love that you share that. And two things sort of jumped out as you were sharing. One, when you were able to make a committed decision to act in spite of the strain, I'm a firm believer, and I see it from myself, I see it with my clients, that what happens is you take the power back because you don't allow things outside of you, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's the scoreboard, whether it's what other people are thinking and saying, to hold you back. So I believe it's one of the most empowering things we can do. And then the second thing, which I love, is that you talked about, and this is where I'm a firm believer of why athletes make amazing leaders. It's that willingness to do things that you don't necessarily want to do, but you know that by doing those things consistently, day in, day out, that it's going to create the results that you actually want.
Mm-hmm. No, I fully agree with that. Yeah.
So you were mentioning about, the accident that happened this past winter. So for you, what I've sort of noticed there, and again, we've been connected over the years, is I feel that I notice that you seem to slow things down, that you seem to be, there's just this lightness about you that I've really observed over the last few months. So I'm curious, what has that challenge, that adversity, that obstacle really taught you from, moving forward?
So you mean when I crashed in February there? What have I learned from that? Well, the biggest thing I've learned is it was a huge revealing to me of how much I have in my life, how many incredible people I have in my life, how much I have to be grateful for. I mean, I always knew I had good support, and I was fortunate to be the position I am and have all the things I have, but I didn't realize the extent of it. And what's that, I guess, help for me is it's really helped from a sense of gratitude. You know, it's helped me reflect on certain situations where it's easy to get focused when something goes not your way, when something negative, but you realize in the contrast of everything else that you do have, this is actually quite minor. And it allows you to go, okay, you know what? We're going to push through. We're going to do the next one. And you know what? Overall, things are actually pretty good. Right at the moment, this little piece is hard, or this part really sucks. But in the grand scheme of things, overall, man, you got so many tools, so many resources available. And hey, this path isn't working. Okay, cool. Try another one. But you're going to have support, encouragement, and you know what? You may need to try 4 or 5 different ones. But it's really helped solidify in my mind the freedom or the confidence to try different things, even though something doesn't work. Okay, reset and try again. Why? Because you know there's people there, you know there's support, you know there's encouragement, there's people that pull in for you. So that's probably been the biggest learning from the whole experience for me.
So it sounds like what you really learned is, again, the ability to be more objective, right? Like, it's not good or bad. It is what it is, but just the ability to, I win or I learn. That's fine.
Yeah. And being grateful.
Yeah.
That's something I hear a lot about, and you read a lot about, the importance of gratitude and recognizing the things you have. Well, during the month of February and March, it was kind of thrown in my face, and that can sound negative, but that was really a positive thing. Like, it was just constant. You have this person's here supporting you, encouraging you. And it was to the point where you couldn't ignore it. And then you walk away realizing, wow, you know how much support you have and encouragement you have, and you almost feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Like it doesn't matter what you do, you can try anything because something's gonna work. So just keep trying at it. And it's yeah.
Well, again, for those that are watching it, like you can see it, right? When you start talking about the gratitude, the blessings in your life, you can see your energy shift, right? Like you can see the smile come out, right? You can see like the energy and enthusiasm, the passion for life come out of you, brother. Okay. So I'm curious, again, we've had some great discussions over the last little bit. And, I feel like what connects us is, that ability to ask questions to figure out, hey, why, right? Why? And I know we've had some great discussions about this idea between life being an infinite game versus a finite game.
Mhm.
So I'm curious for you, what has that simple idea really, what has that allowed you to maybe see or better understand in life?
It's changed probably maybe help refine the way I coach, what I kind of impart to people. I mean, especially when I look at, what I do now in terms of being in the health and fitness space. Taking an infinite mindset is so important, because it's one of the reasons that Jess and I made the decision in our facility to no longer do challenges, no longer do X week programs. And the reason being is, too often we've seen people who, they want to make a change, they want to do something, and a challenge comes along or a program, like, okay, cool, I'm going to do that. And then they jump in, but right out the get go, that's a finite mindset. And then it's not uncommon to hear people in challenges or whatever it is talk about, oh, only 2 weeks left of this challenge, or only X weeks left, and then I can go back to normal. And the problem becomes is, having learned about, the whole framework of infinite versus finite, there's no way to win at health. There's no way to get to a point of health and wellness where you're like, okay, cool, I'm here now I can go do whatever I want because I'll just stay healthy. No, it's an infinite mindset where the things that got you there, you need to keep doing them if you want to stay where you're at. And it's probably helped me verbalize to other people where one of my greatest successes has been with my overall health and fitness. It's not something I realized I did, but it was just the way that I approached it. And now being able to verbalize and help people understand how I look at it, and it's helped provide some clarity and helped me be a better support for people who are legitimately trying to make a change. They want to be better. They want to, stay active for their kids. They want to be active in their retirement and do things. And so having that mindset has really helped in our coaching, and that, I encourage people to come 3-4 times a week at 70-80%, and that is going to allow you to come over and over and over again. Previously, my mindset was, no, you got to go hard, you got to push hard. And those are from my days playing football and bodybuilding. It was a different kind of mentality, and, just as hard as you can. And that was the only way. And it was that mentality. And now it's really flipped the way that I even approach my own personal training, and the way I look at myself when I'm in the gym training. I still got a little bit of that football player competitiveness in me, but
Yeah.
we're slowly working on making that wholesale shift. But it's been a big help.
Well, and again, I love, and again, I'll go back to this. This is why I believe the athlete mindset is so powerful, because, the lessons you learn on the football field, on the ice, on the court, really do set you up to be successful in the game of life. But what I really got from you again was what every high performer has. It's this delicate balance between being process driven but goal oriented. But I say that with, I know you made that post, but it's focusing your energy on the process, and the goal takes care of itself, right? The goal, right? It's a checkpoint. It's one quick metric, right? It's not the be all end all.
I agree, man. And a recent phrase I've come to repeat, use, integrate to my communication is when a measure becomes a goal, it ceases to be a good measure. And I think with regards to, everybody talks about goal setting, and it's important, it gives you the roadmap where to go. But I think where some people struggle is differentiating between what's a measure of progress versus what's the actual goal we're trying to achieve. Again, if I take that into my world where I'm comfortable and familiar, weight training. So if we look at, say, the goal for a lot of people is they want to get stronger. And one of the ways that I can measure that is through the exercise known as the squat. And so if you come and you see me and today you can squat 50 pounds, and then we work together for 3-4 months, and then you're able to squat 100 pounds, that's a good measure of your strength. The challenge becomes is if you come and see me on day one and you can squat 50 pounds, and then in your mind you say, my goal is to squat 100 pounds. Well, if all of a sudden you change your technique, change the way you grip it, modify things, maybe give it a little extra effort that day, or take pre-workout or something, or whatever it is, to achieve the goal, you've optimized for the goal. Now, did you get stronger, or did you just change some things which allowed you to squat that 100 pounds? And keeping in mind that the goal is to get stronger. The goal isn't to squat 100 pounds. Squatting 100 pounds would be a reflection of movement towards the goal, right? And it seems on the surface, it may seem like semantics, but it's not. I think it's really important that you differentiate between those two.
And what I love about what you're sharing, and again, I love how you always relate things back to, health and wellness and fitness, because again, it gives something people to use. But what I really heard from you is it's that what's driving it? Is it what you truly want? And like you talked about, that goal to be stronger, or is it simply the result that you're after, right? And that's where people need to understand of the differences. Like, why do you want to lift that 100, right? Let's say the 100 pounds. Okay, well, and it's that feeling. So again, it's that delicate balance between actually what's driving you. Are the results driving you, or is what driving you is the process, right, to get there? Okay. So what have you noticed? So as you've made this shift, right, like that's very different, right, in terms of you guys choosing to not do challenges, right? To look at health and fitness as an infinite game. What have you noticed as you have shared your ideas and beliefs with your community, with other people? Like, are people buying in, or some people,
Well, it's interesting when I talk to people about this kind of stuff. Like just the other day, I had a gentleman come see me. It's some guy I've known from years ago, and he's been following my stuff. And we talked a little bit about this, about adjusting goal versus measure and what the focus is. And I talked to lots of people about, and this guy was super experienced. I mean, he has been training for years, and he kind of stopped and he reflected on it. And then he actually sent me a message a little bit later. He said, you know what? I've never thought about it that way. And this is my most common response that I hear from people. The other big thing I've been, talking about is regards to the adaptations that weight training actually causes in your body, or exercise for that matter. We talked about the strain, and when I've had that conversation with people about the purpose of exercise is teaching you how to manage strain, almost without question, everybody kind of stops, reflects on it. They're like, it's almost like a light comes over the face. They're like, you know what? I never thought about it that way, and it makes sense. Again, I know I always relate everything back to health and fitness. Okay. That's kind of where I live. When you go to a gym, when you go to train, when you go to purposely exercise, I've come to realize there's two major ways that your body changes, right? The first is a change in physiology. And that's what most people walk into a gym looking for. Typically, more muscle, less fat, more bone mass, whatever it is, something about the body wants to change. And the reality is, and we know this from research, that Physiology adapts relative to intensity. So the more intense you train, the faster your physiology and the greater the physiology is going to change. And this is what drove me as a bodybuilder, as a power lifter, as a football player, trying to get as strong and as big as possible. And, the challenge becomes is that your capacity for intensity is governed by your nutrition, your sleep, your stress, and the big one we can't control is our biology. Every year we age, our ability to recover, to manage strain fades off. I mean, that's reality. The cheeky definition of health that I like to use is health is the slowest possible way to die, right? Nobody's going to make it out. So every year it becomes harder and harder to recover. And so a lot of the people who come and see me are people like me. You know what? They were maybe former athletes, were active, and then all of a sudden they finish school, got a job, got kids, got family, and they're like, life took over. They weren't as active any longer. Dietary habits changed, and they're in their mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s, whatever, looking at the mirror going, oh, what happened? My physiology has really changed in a way that I'm not keen on. And so they go back to the gym and they remember what they were like in their teens and their 20s, and they chase that intensity, but without full appreciation for the nutritional and rest support that's required. And then of course the impact of biology. And it's not uncommon to see people get tired, get beat up, get worn out. And the worst part is after, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, you reflect on your effort, how much you put in, how much this has hurt, how hard you've trained. And then you reflect on what you see in the mirror, the change in physiology. And very rarely does the change in physiology seem reasonable based on the level of effort. And so it creates a whole lot more frustration. I busted my ass, I've done all this stuff, and here's the result. Wait, why am I doing this? And so the other thing I've come to realize, the other important adaptation that happens is your brain adapts. And I like to call the brain the computer and the body's the machine. And so what happens is the brain changes in two very important ways. Is one, it gets better at recruiting muscles. It learns how to use all the engines of your muscles, and just purely making up numbers. Say, for example, the first day you squat, you look at the range of motion your hips, knees, and ankles go through in a squat. That's not something you do every day. Right? It's a much bigger, so it's new for the body. The body hasn't used muscles like that. And so very first time, it's like, whoa, what happened? What's going on here? But then the next time you do it, it remembers, okay, that little computer program is there. And so very quickly you go from, say, using 20% to say 22, 23. There's been no physiology change in the muscle, but the computer is better controlling the machine, recruiting more of the engines of the muscle. And so you get stronger, right? Just because you're using more of what you have. The other really important one is the computer learns how to coordinate the muscles better. You become more efficient. And I mean, this makes sense to everybody when it comes to sports skills. You don't teach a kid to play basketball by throwing them out on the field, on the court, and say, go play basketball. No, you teach them how to dribble, and you adjust their technique, and then you teach them how to dribble and move, and then how to dribble. And it's a progress because their brain internalizes it, learns the patterns, and they get better. Well, the same thing goes with basic fundamental human movement. Okay. And so when we have somebody come in and train, their brain gets better at controlling their body, so they become more efficient. What does that mean? It takes less energy to do the same task, or with the same amount of expenditure, you can do more. And so those adaptations happen very quickly. And the important thing to recognize is the computer, the brain, adapts based on frequency, which is the exact opposite of intensity. Okay, it adapts, and this is why we practice in sports, and we practice repetition, because that's how your brain adapts. And so when I talk about my mind shift and my focus on training, it's all about the focus is on the computer, because the body's going to follow the computer, right? As the computer gets better controlling the body, what happens is you don't hurt as much, you can do more, you get stronger, so hey, you do more. There's this belief out there, and one of the big benefits of weight training, because what drives a lot of people to a place like mine is some desire for weight loss, typically fat loss. And it's marketed, go out and do weight training, you're gonna build all this metabolically active muscle tissue. Okay, maybe, But what I've come to realize is if somebody gets stronger because their brain is better recruiting their muscles, and if somebody becomes more efficient because they're better coordinated, they can do more with less effort, or do more stuff with the same amount of effort. They do more things. They don't need as much help because they're stronger. They can go a little bit longer because they're more efficient. That leads up to the calorie burn. You do more stuff over the course of a year, you're going to burn more energy. It's really simple. And we haven't changed physiology. The cool thing is the physiology is going to change. It's going to follow the body. That's just the way it happens. But the really nice thing is when people make that shift and they're coming in going, okay, I'm focused on getting stronger. I'm focused on getting more efficient. I'm focused on adding capacity, adding capability. Every week they see some kind of progress. So every week they can say, hey, you know that thing I'm doing, that thing that really sucked, I can see it's having a positive effect on my life. I had one lady tell me, she said, I used to go to Costco and buy my bag of kitty litter, and I need somebody to help me carry it out. She says, now I throw it over my shoulder, walk to the car, pop the trunk, throw it in, and I'm done. You know, a lady who's a baker, she bakes and rolls fondant, and apparently that's taxing. But she says, you know what, I was rolling fondant the other day and mixing, and then I realized I didn't have to take a break. I'm actually good. Okay, cool. These are meaningful impacts in people's lives. And it's all about the computer controlling the machine. And then in about 3 months, 6 months, it's regular for people to come back to me and go, my shirts don't fit anymore. They're loose. My pants don't fit. But they're in such a more positive mindset. And one of the statements we like to use is strive to be everything you can be instead of wishing to be less. Strive to be more instead of wishing to be less. And that's been, you know, a lot my brain has shifted over the last six months, a year. Maybe it was because of the head injury, I'm not sure. But it's really reframed how I approach things with some pretty positive results. So remember what I said earlier about asking me a question?
No, but you know what? Again, I love it, right? Because again, the energy, the enthusiasm, the passion for what you do shines through. And it's a great testament to anyone watching this. This is how this is what great leaders do. But I heard a couple things from you, and I really got from you. I love how you talk about this idea of like the body is an instrument of your mind, right? And it's really learning to discipline what's going on between the two ears, right? And your body will do whatever the mind repeatedly tells it to do. So I love that. And I love how you really went back to this idea, and you were talking about it at the end. It's really like the benefits of movement, right? And I always think back to this, like consistency, right? You talk about frequency. Consistency creates confidence. Confidence creates champions, right? And whether that champion is putting a bag of kitty litter, being able to carry that out of Costco, whether it's being able to roll out fondant with less effort, whether it's being able to squat more, whether it's being better with your finances, right? It really doesn't matter, but it really comes back to the idea of, like you said, frequency, consistency, day in, day out. There's no supplements for reps and sets.
The answer is actually quite easy. The answer is really easy. It's the execution which is difficult.
So one thing that really jumped out, and you've referenced this a couple of times, so I'm really curious. You talked earlier about this idea of gratitude, like you sort of got immersed in this environment of gratitude. Like people are saying, hey, focus on what you do have. But I've noticed, like you talked just now about reframing, right? Like the law of polarity. Is that a new habit for you, or is that something that you've sort of always done? Because I've really noticed your ability to like flip the script a number of times on this conversation.
I don't know if it's something I do consciously or it's just kind of internal. I like to look at things and try and explain them to myself and try and understand them. And I don't know, maybe say, is there different approaches or a different way we could look at this? You know, dogma drives me nuts. You know, when I ask somebody, okay, why are we doing this, or why do you make that recommendation, and too often the answer is, well, it's because that's the way we've always done it. You know, and I commented earlier to you that one of the things that drives me nuts, to some extent, yes, I'm like a 4-year-old. I mean, that question why always comes out for me, and it's a little bit more better presented than just why, but it's always there. And if somebody gives me a direction to do something, I need you to do this, I want you to do this. Okay, cool. Help me understand why we're doing it. And if the answer comes back because I said so, that's where we're going to have a bit of an issue, because I need to understand the rationale for it. And why is that? Because if I experience something like my natural, I guess one of my natural skill sets is I'm a teacher. I like to teach things and impart things. And in order to do that, I have to understand the rationale for why we're doing it. And then that helps me conceptualize it, understand where the person's coming from. Okay, we're doing it for this reason. Okay, now I understand where your thought process is and why. And I have a whole bunch of experience in my life, and maybe I can, improve it, add to it, adjust it, maybe deliver it in a little bit different context. But to simply blindly execute orders is not, it's just not inherent for me. So maybe that's where the reframing or the reapproach is. I always like to look at something and say, okay, this system is great. Could it be better? Could I come to realize, and this was important, prior to doing this, I worked for an orthopedic company, and part of my role was training the new sales reps that came in. And it's a really interesting dynamic in medical device sales. It's one of the few environments where the sales rep actually knows less than the customer, right? It's not very common. If I'm here talking to a surgeon about something to do with ACL, I know a very small component of what's involved with ACL in the domain I know, whereas they know this much, right? And that's with any. I'm not a doctor. No sales reps are doctors. These doctors have a breadth of knowledge which is far surpassing. With that being said, one of the things I used to communicate to all our sales reps is it can be very easy to see the doctor here, and all of a sudden you're down here, and you get into this mentality of, oh, please, great human being, bestow on me your greatness, and I'm going to do whatever you tell me. Well, that's not a positive relationship. The reality is at a certain point, and I mean, these were all accomplished professionals. Some of them were mid to early 20s. Some of them were older, 30s, mid 30s. But the reality is these two adults, doctor and sales rep, the sales rep has accomplished things, has done things, has experiences in their life that doctor does not, and vice versa, of course. But the reality is right now you're in that physician's world where they are an expert, but that doesn't minimize your contributions as a human being. And the reality is there may be situations where you have some experience, some piece of knowledge that person does not, that you can contribute and add to it to improve the ultimate system. But if all of a sudden you get into a relationship, and it's easy, especially with that discrepancy in power dynamic, where your brain shuts off and you begin to think, oh, whatever they say must be it, and I'm just going to accept everything they say, and not, I don't mean question it in terms of a negative, like, oh, you're wrong, you can't be, no, but try and understand it, help me understand why this is happening. Okay, cool, that jives with my knowledge. Or, you know what, that's a little bit different than what I understand, and here's what I understand. And now we have an opportunity where either they can correct your misunderstanding and you become better as a human being, or you may introduce a piece of knowledge that they weren't privileged to, and they may say, you know what, I never thought about it that way. And if you refine it here, and here, now we're on to something, right? And so that may be where that comes from for me, because I always love when somebody says, no, I disagree. All right, cool, tell me, help me understand why. That's my favorite answer. No, I disagree with you. Awesome, let's talk.
Yeah. Well, again, you bring up a great point, and I love that you're again sharing, the mindset of what goes behind, a high performer. And two things really jumped out, and they kind of go parallel. Is one, the ability to stop and actually think. And I think what most people are unaware of is that we operate on autopilot like 96 and 98% of our day. Yeah. So if you're operating on autopilot, you're just taking in everything from your external environment. And folks, this might be a great reminder that if you do that right now with everything that's going on in the world, and you're watching CNN, you're watching the media, just think about, if you're just like taking all this in, I often, and that's why I keep that here. I have this bag of Lego, of my kids' Lego. It's like all the negativity, all the BS, all the doom and gloom, you just absorb it. So I love what Pete's talking about, like actually stop and think first, but then two, the importance of learning how to ask questions, right? Coming from a place where you actually start to better understand. Yeah, like why does a person think this way? Why do they believe that? And when you do that, can you just imagine how much better you would be at having some great conversation? Right. So I love that you're sharing just these great, simple, tools, right? These soft skills, right? These ones that talk about how to be a great human being. So
100%. And I, what you said there, asking questions, it is a skill.
Yeah.
But what I've found is, and I've done lots of sales training with my previous careers and stuff, and there's a whole lot of coaching about how to ask questions in a way to get people to the answer that you want. And it's never felt good to me, or, in terms of, setting somebody up for the home run, now I got you type of thing. And in the sales, what I try to teach people and what I try and internalize in myself is, if you come from a place of genuine curiosity, where you're actually legitimately interested, then almost without fail, you'll have a positive interaction. Where things fail and they go down is when the person in the back of their mind, they can tell her, wait a minute, you're trying to set me up for something. You're asking me and all of a sudden the guards go up, and that becomes very confrontational. And I learned this probably in my years of working in healthcare, and it's something I imparted to a lot of the new people coming through, is the reality is physicians they're smart human beings. So that's part of the requirement for becoming a doctor. You have to be smart. And almost all of these people, they could have stepped this way and gone into a career of business or whatever, and CEO, Fortune 500, VP, whatever. They probably, because of their intelligence, would have made significantly more money with significantly less stress than what a doctor feels. And the one commonality I found is that's made them go right. There's some internal desire to help people. And that's what made them do this way. And so when you come from a genuine place of curiosity, trying to understand, try to fully appreciate the situation, in my experience, almost every single physician would take the time and explain their rationale. It's when you're questioning them so you can set them up so that your product's the right answer to their question. That's when you get into problems. And I think that's not unique to physicians. That's human beings in general. The one thing something I've come to realize about humans in psychology is the only reason we're the dominant species is we have the ability to work together. Right. And the example I use is one human throwing rocks at a lion ends up dinner in an angry lion's tummy. 20 humans throwing rocks at a lion, they get to eat. Yeah. Right. And so our ability to work together, and there isn't a person I've come across who doesn't like to share what they know, what their knowledge is, what their experience is, and impart information that they're comfortable with and they understand. And so, when we were talking a little bit earlier, I said, I've got very little curiosity to what people do, but I am infinitely fascinated with why are they doing that? Help me understand, what was the rationale that made you make the decision? Why did you take this? Okay, cool. I never thought about it that way. I'm going to, and it's really opened a lot of doors for me. Yeah. And helped impart a lot of knowledge that I wouldn't have otherwise, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, no, I love that, right? Like curiosity, right? And I'll just share with you, one of my things I often talk about is like serve their heart, right? So one of the things I talk about is, I like to look at my hands and say, serve their heart, right? And when I talk about heart, I'm not talking about the physical heart. I'm talking about like their subconscious, right? Like truly like focus and get laser focus on learning more about that person, genuine curiosity, like you talked about. And like you said, it always leads to great places. It always leads to great conversation, builds great connection and trust and all those great things. And really at the end of the day, that's what life's about, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So brother, I have one last question for you. So as we were talking about earlier, the last year and a half, depending on when people are watching or listening to this, has been an interesting time in human history, like we've talked about. But, challenges, obstacles, setbacks, they are part of the game of life. It's not that we want to expect them, but it's just understanding that they will pop up from time to time. So I'm curious, what is one piece of advice, one suggestion, something you would offer someone that is maybe going through a difficult time? That one focused action that they could take today just to help get back on their feet, to create a positive play in their life and get back on their journey to greatness.
I think it's, for me, what's helped is recognizing and focusing on the things that I do have. And I mean, at the risk of sounding cliche, it's, the reality is, I mean, if you're watching this on Facebook Live, if you're watching this later, you have a mobile device, or you have a computer, you have access to the internet, you have time in your life to sit here and view this conversation for whatever time period you listen to it. And that's a lot of positive things, and it's recognizing in humans, we're hardwired to avoid pain, and that's very different than seeking pleasure. And so there's a natural tendency to focus or give a disproportionate amount of attention to the negative things, the things you're trying to avoid, the things that can harm you. And as a result, you can miss a lot of the really positive things that are going on, the wins, the people that care about you, the resources you have, the fact that you have clothes to wear, you have food to eat, you're not worried about some of the major issues that are happening throughout the world, that we're actually quite fortunate. You look at what's happening in the Middle East right now. That's a very difficult situation, and I am so grateful that I'm sitting here talking to you on this beautiful piece of technology in this climate controlled room. After we're done, I'm debating, what am I going to have for lunch? Not am I going to have lunch, and then what am I going to have for dinner? Not am I going to have dinner? And I think that's probably step one, for what's that worth. Make a list, talk to people who's near to you, somebody who's close, and say, I'm struggling to focus on the good things. Can you help me recognize or see what's good in my life? And anybody who cares about you, I know in the conversations I have with my wife, it's much easier for me to recognize positives in her than it is for her to recognize positives in her, and vice versa. And sometimes just having an external person remind you of those things, not only remind you that they exist, but also remind you that, hey, other people probably see them too. And so that may be the best way to start.
Yeah. I love that, brother. And again, it's just that keep it simple philosophy of just, whatever you want to call it, reframing, gratitude, the law of polarity, whatever, like focus on the great things, focus on the blessings you have in your life, and just feels better, right?
100%, man.
Okay. So, brother, again, I know this conversation has definitely piqued interest. Again, I love seeing all the things that you and Jesse are putting out there on social, and again, just how much you just want to serve people on their wellness journey. What is the best way that people can follow you or get connected to the Rep Room? Yeah, I would love if you would share some of your.
Yeah. So Instagram and Facebook, just search for the Rep Room London. The website, you can get in touch with us, the reproomlondon.com. I'm on as my Facebook is Pete Mogan. My Instagram is Pete J Mogan, I think. Jesse set it up for me, so I don't fully remember. Her Instagram, she's one of the amazing things about my wife is she's really embodied this idea of women being strong and being powerful. And I'll tell you this on open forum. She is 190 pounds, right? And most women are terrified about anyone knowing their weight, especially, I mean, she's a female, she's almost 200 pounds. Are you kidding me? But she's proud of that because she's strong, because she works, and she's all about adding what she can do and how much more she can build versus, trying to waste away and be less. And so she's on Instagram at Jessie Bicks is how you find her on Instagram. And you know what, if anybody wants to reach out, talk, has a different opinion, that's what I love.
Yeah.
I love, I see things differently. Okay, perfect. But be ready to chat because I'm going to want to hear why. So that's probably the best way to find us. We're not hard to find, at least I don't think,
Yeah.
but
no, you definitely aren't. And I'll be sure to share out in the description of the podcast on YouTube, on Facebook, all of the ways that you can connect with Pete and Jessie in the rep room. And like I said, folks, I would highly recommend, and again, love what he's putting out there. It goes beyond, health and fitness and wellness. It's really about, again, how to win at the game of life. So yeah, I would highly encourage it. Thanks, so brother, I just want to take a moment just to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the man you are, the great husband you are, the great dad, the great teammate you've been for me, the great, the brother, the teacher, the coach, the mentor, but most importantly, the great human being you are. I've always been amazed at your ability to inspire, your ability to focus on really just having a conversation, empowering other people, and just to, bring light to the lives of others. And again, I know you've done it for so many other people. You have done it for me in my life, brother. So I just want to really celebrate you for that.
You're very kind, JT, and I thank you. You're giving me goosebumps over here.
Okay. So here is my suggestion. Pete has given you so many valuable nuggets of wisdom, right? But what I want you to understand is that knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of that knowledge that actually creates great results. So take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and consistently apply it to your life and go do the work. I look forward to chatting with you again in the huddle next time. Have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you.